All right, spray guns and stuff. Spray guns, one of my, well, I like them. And as you can see, I go pretty well armed. But, you know, I've been doing it all my life, and I like spray guns. We'll talk about them a minute here. Because it's important that you understand how a spray gun works, how to take care of it, and that kind of good stuff. Now, back in the day, you know, when the dinosaurs roamed, according to my grandkids, the guns we used, we simply call them today just a conventional spray gun. And they look very similar to this. Now, this is a gun that actually goes on a turbine. But the way they work, what makes the difference in guns is how they're fed, how they get the fluid, and what propels them. Now, the two common today that we have out here is you have them that are driven by compressed air, and you have them that are driven by the turbines. And we'll talk about them in a little bit. The old conventional spray guns worked like this. You had the fluid was in the bottom, down in the cup, and there was a tremendous amount of air went through it. Anywhere from 40 to 60, 70 pounds of air. And what it did is the air passed through, it created a suction in here, and it sucked it up, and it took a lot of air to do that. Then came the HVLP, which stands for high volume, low pressure, meaning that you've got a good volume of fluid and you're able to atomize, to break it up, the fluid up. To understand that, atomization is the art or the means of breaking a fluid up into teeny tiny droplets. That's what spray guns do. They break it up into extremely fine droplets so that they're put on a surface and they flow together and create a film. The better you can atomize it, meaning the finer you can break it up, the finer and better finish you can lay down. Simple as that. But the problem with the conventional guns was that they took a huge amount of air. And when and you got a lot of overspray because it was just blowing everywhere. Overspray, that's the amount of finish that goes into the air that's not deposited on the surface. They were about a 50, depending on air pressure, they could be 40 to 50% efficient, meaning that half of your finish went in the air. When HVLPs come along, somebody figured out that if they took and put the cup on top, and these are called gravity feds. Not hard to understand, but the fluid on top, you don't have to have that massive volume of air. But then they had to redesign some of the air caps. But the way this simply works is just the fluid drains down, the air comes through, and all you need now is just enough air to atomize the fluid. Thus came HVLPs. One of the best innovations in spray gun technology ever was. Then came the turbines. The turbines went back to the original siphon feed or conventional spray guns, but they did something different. They figured out that by pressurizing the cup, they could push the fluid up into the fluid chamber, and they didn't have to have all that pressure again. Okay. But like I said, the problem is, and always has been, is that you have to break it up into extremely fine particles. Now, that's done there's several different things that affect that. One is how much air pressure. In other words, how much air is pressure do you have to atomize the liquid? But one of the biggest things that affects that is the amount of liquid and the viscosity of the liquid. Viscosity. Thin, like water. Thick, like latex paint or heavy enamels, mustard, compared to water. Viscosity is just one of them fancy words that describes how thick or thin something is. You know, you see motor oil be like a 10W30. Means with hot and cold, the viscosity changes. The lower the viscosity, the thinner something is. The higher the viscosity, the thicker it is. Did I get that right? Yeah. All right. So, how do you deal with thick and thin paint, thick and thin material? Well, the way you do it is you have the fluid controls on your spray gun. All right. This is called an air cap right here. And the air cap will consist of an orifice that the fluid comes out of, and it will consist of holes on the side that the air comes out of. Fluid comes out, air comes in from both directions, and atomizes and breaks it up. All right, but there's another thing that we have to deal with. This is called a fluid needle. Every spray gun will have one. Or a fluid nozzle, I'm sorry. Different sizes, different shapes. Now this is the little guy that the fluid comes through. Now the way these work, when you pull this trigger, see this needle right here? It's called a fluid needle. When you pull this trigger, this needle comes back, and when it does, it allows the fluid to come around and come out the fluid nozzle. But what we have to deal with is that different viscosities require different size fluid needles and fluid nozzles. And they're usually a match set. This is made to seal off inside of here. Creates a seal. If you're using a water or to skim milk viscosity, a number 1.0 tip is what you want. It's thin. It's for thin materials, very small orifice. A medium viscosity, which is about like whole milk or cooking oil. A 1.5. A medium or 1.5 is probably the most common needle and nozzle used in the woodworking industry, simply put. Heavy is a 2.0. That's a heavy cream, something like a maple syrup or a heavy water base. Very heavy, you've got a 2.5. Some actually make a 3. That's for heavy latex paint, heavies, enamels, really thick stuff. Now, some of these companies will denote their needle and nozzle sizes in thousands, a machinist's measurement, if you will. And you could convert a 0.43, 43 thousandths needle nozzle is equivalent to a 1.1 nozzle in metric. Okay, this is all metric calculations. All right. So what you have to do is, depending upon the thickness you're spraying, you have to be able to adjust your needle and nozzle size. Now, for years and years, when we had, the only thing pretty much we had was the solvent base. You know, your lacquers and that kind of stuff. Solvent base products can be thinned to suit the gun. Meaning, if I'm using a 1.5 and I've got a real thick lacquer or something, I could thin it, or an enamel, I could thin it to where it was thin enough to use with my 1.5 nozzle. Worked forever that way. So changing needles and nozzles wasn't a huge issue. Everybody kind of went with a 1.3 or a 1.4 or 1.5, something like that. Pretty much handled what we had to do. But that's not the case today. Okay, today we have water bases. And I can tell you this, water base is going to become the dominant finish, and it's very, very quick. It's pretty much mandatory throughout Europe. It's hitting here hard. Everybody comes back and says, yeah, well, you know, we've been hearing about that for decades. And you have. But the problem with it is, up until now, the technology and the chemistry in water base wasn't sufficient to be able to make it mandatory. That's not the case today. Now, one of the things I've found with working with all the water bases is that understanding them and how to work with them, they're extremely nice. And they do a super job. Now, that said, though, they require a little bit more understanding of our spray capabilities. And what am I talking about? Well, water base is thick by its nature. Water base is an emulsion. What do I mean? Water base, I know we're going to talk about them molecule things, but very quickly, water base is finish molecules that are suspended in a solution that is carried by water. The finish that's in it, okay, the phenolics and the alkyd resins and the acrylics and all of this, they are not dissolved by water. You have to understand what I'm saying. In solvent base, you put alcohol in shellac and it dissolves the shellac. If you took that shellac and ground it up really, really, really super fine, and then you were able to float it in water and keep it in there and spray it, and then those little teeny pieces of shellac were able to come together and stick together, that's basically water base. It's kind of the way it works. So that's why you can't thin water base a lot. If you thin it very much, then all them little molecules in there separate too far and they don't stick together good. And they don't come together. Now the other thing with water is water has surface tension. I know, what am I talking about? Well, you ever fill a glass of water and watch it, you can actually get it up above the rim a little bit? Or you see them water skeeters? You know, you out fishing or on the lake and you see them skeeters hopping around all over the top of the water. You know, the bass love them. Well, what do you think holds them up? Surface tension. If you put a drop of water on your table, the water will bead up and stand up. Wax your car, it rains on it. Yeah, always happens. Look at the beads. Surface tension. All right, so water base is thicker. So we have to do two things. One, we have to atomize. We have to break it up better. The other thing, and the other thing is, depending on the various companies, and it can vary even in a company from product to product, is the viscosity. You may use a sanding sealer that's pretty thin. On the same token, you might get a top coat that's pretty heavy. So, what am I telling you? I'm telling you, if you go get a spray gun or you get a turbine, and you're going to be dealing with water bases, or you're going to try to spray house paint. Now, I'm going to be honest. These guns are not, while you can get the bigger nozzles and they will spray a water base, it's not the best way to do it. The turbines will spray a latex. Not water-based, I said water-based, I'm talking about latex paint. Latex paint's nothing more than a water-based finish. It's into that. It's just real heavy and thick. These guns will spray it, but you need a very large nozzle. Same way with these. The best way to handle a latex paint is the airless guns. What are they? You've seen, I don't have one, you've seen contractors use them. And what it does is it pumps, the fluid is pumped by a physical pump. And it's put under pressure, just like a water pump would be. Just like the water pressure in your faucet. They put it under a lot of pressure. Then it's forced out through a very small fluid nozzle, and that causes it to break up and atomize. There's no air involved. It's purely, it's just like your finger over a water hose. That's the way they work. Now, even with that, you have to sometimes thin that thick latex paint because it's predominantly made to be rolled or brushed on. But what we're talking about is spray guns and furniture and finishing that type of thing. All right, one of the things, so we've talked about everything here a minute. We got to talk a little bit about keeping them clean. That's imperative. Now, we have basically two types of finishes. We have a reactive and evaporative. Evaporative finishes are lacquer, nitrocellulose lacquers predominantly, and shellacs, meaning that one coat will dissolve the next. They're pretty easy to clean because you can take some lacquer thinner, rinse them out. Case of shellac, you can take some alcohol and rinse it out. And even if it gets hard in there, you can soak it in lacquer thinner or alcohol and it'll dissolve it and off you go. Water base is not that way. Water base, once it has dried, is impervious to water. Actually more so than the solvent bases. So if you leave water base in your gun and you let it get hard, shame on you. You might be upset and head it back to the store and your gun's headed for the dumpster. Even if I'm going to be a little bit of time between spraying coats, I will take my air cap off, put it in some water or some alcohol. Now, I told you about that surface tension. Alcohol mixes with water, and alcohol will remove water. So if you wash your gun, the best way to do it is rinse it out with some good warm water. Flush it out really, really good. Remove your fluid tip right here, your air cap, and your needle, and clean everything. Make sure you have a good brush cleaning kit or some good brushes and whatever. And when you do, you get down inside and you clean everything. Now, with that said, the other thing you want to do, particularly again with water base, if you're using water base in between, and even in between coats, it can set pretty fast. A good idea is keep you a wet, and you're going to be a little while between coats, take you a wet sponge and wrap it across the end of your fluid tip, put a rubber band around it, keep it from drying out. In the case of reactive finishes in solvent base, what am I talking about? You've got the catalyzed products. You've got the conversion varnishes, the post-catalyzed lacquers and all of those. They are also a reactive, meaning they're reacting with something, a catalyst that's put in there, and that stuff sets up, it's tenacious. And if it gets hard on you, well, it's over. Some of that stuff will set up, you can't even get the gun apart. Keeping a spray gun extremely clean is very, very important. The other thing you want to do if you're using the turbine, make sure you clean your cups. Very good. This actually has a gun cleaner in it. But you see how sticky that was? That actually had a little bit of water-based finish in it not too long ago. So this needs to get cleaned very quickly. The other thing if you're using the turbines, or if you're using the air that uses air, and it's the same type of gun. They make these pressurized cups that work with air as well. They work quite nice. Is that you see this line right here? This is your pressure line to pressurize your cup. This is a check valve. Once the cup is pressurized, then this prevents the air from backing out of it and keeps the cup under pressure. So when you first start spraying with a bottom cup, a pressurized cup, give it just a little bit, bump your trigger, let your air through a little bit so that the cup gets pressurized. Now, there's another type out here, and that's called an air-assisted airless. And I realize probably most of you could care less, but I'm going to show it to you. If you're in a kitchen cabinet or you're spraying a lot of material, here it is. Air-assisted airless. What is it? We actually have a pump that pumps the fluid up through here. Then we have an air line comes in from the back. Now, air-assisted airless, meaning it works just like a pump, just like those, we talked about those latex or the house paint guns. Except that this has a little bit more air pressure to it, usually 10 pounds, 5 to 10 pounds, and it comes out and helps us to atomize a little better, break it up. All right. The other thing with these is we don't have cups, top or bottom, to deal with. But these are not for the faint of heart. Unless you're doing an awful lot of spraying, it's something you probably would not be interested in. Like I said, if you're into a lot of it, these are really nice. All right. Now we're going to talk about, there's two other things you're going to see. In the turbines, in all of them, this is called a quick air cap. See it right here? And in this position, it's going to spray a vertical fan of fluid. I can push it in and turn it to a varying degrees. That'll spray a circle. This will spray it this way. Okay. This gun will do exactly the same thing, except that I can only turn it to be horizontal or vertical. Now the reason for that is that back here on this one we have what's called a fan adjustment. And it will take the fan and it will adjust it from a wide to a narrow. A wide, ever how we want. So we can actually tune it way down. Now this is a turbine unit, and it also has a fan adjustment. And these are on the more expensive guns. They're on all air-assisted guns. On the turbines, most of them do not have the fan adjustment. We can only adjust whether it's vertical, horizontal, or in a round pattern. This control controls the fluid so that when you pull the trigger, how much fluid's coming out. Okay? So we can tune it down to where we're just getting a little bit of fluid, or we can back it off to where we're getting a lot more fluid. Your higher end spray guns are very, very meticulous in this, and these are typically used in the automotive industry. Okay, and they are quite nice, but they're expensive. But you have you have your fan adjustment, you have your fluid, and you have, basic air control here, air control. You get into your higher end guns. This is a SATA. You can actually get them, in this case, this thing is actually has, this system is, it off locks. You can mix it. There's a little cap on it. Snips on this, snips on the back, and you can store it, put another canister on it, and go. All right? It's called a quick change system. Really nice. Now, with it, you actually have a digital readout right here. And when you put pressure on it, it will tell you specifically how many pounds of pressure you've got. As we get into this, you'll see where that, you want to know that. This gun, this again is a SATA. It uses a regulator. That's pretty typical. All right, here's my Kremlins. Kremlin and SATA are kind of the, well, they're kind of the Maseratis and Ferraris of spray guns. They're really nice. Do you need this high-end gun to spray finishes? No, you don't. Are they nice to have? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. But here again, here's a Turbine that's pretty much got all those features. Now, y'all saw me use my little gun earlier. He's a little gravity fed. And you're going to see these out here all over. You can buy these guns for prices you won't believe. They're extremely economical. This is one of the first ones out. This technology has been around forever. And ever since HVLPs came out, and it's one of those things, quite simply, isn't broke. It simply works. We told you fluid drains out. This is just a little gun for a little touch up on the inside and whatever. And right here on it, you have the fan adjustment, and you have your fluid nozzle right here. And down here you have your air adjustment. They all have the same things. Here's a S3 Kremlin, nice little touch up, just sweetheart of gun. There's all kind of spray guns out there. All right. Now, we're going to talk about one other thing, and that's, you're going to see coming out now, LVLP, low volume, low pressure. What is that? Well, it's actually a different configuration within the air cap. In the case of this Kremlin, what I have on here is let me see here a minute. All right, this is an HVLP. And if you notice right here, if you can see, there's two holes on each side. And then, of course, your air ports. Now, this is an LVLP, and you'll notice that the air holes are angled a little different. You're also going to notice on this one that there's two holes here and here. So they're using, it's not as high pressure, but they're using more air around it to get better atomization. These create some of the finest finishes out there. Low volume, that stands for low volume, low pressure, meaning you don't have to have a lot of fluid coming out to break it up, kind of thing. All right, they're virtually no overspray. The efficiency rate on the HVLPs is about 70 to 80%. LVLPs, it gets in the 90% range. Okay. Now we're going to talk just a minute about this nasty word. Viscosity. Now, when you buy a gun, most of them will send you a chart. There'll be charts on them. And a lot of the manufacturers of their products will have charts. And they're going to be talking about viscosities in the term of seconds. What in the name, what are they talking about? I'm going to explain it to you. Some of them will send you a little thing looks like this, and you can buy them that look like this. And they're simply called viscosity cups. And I know you're sitting there saying, do what? Okay. It's kind of the most accurate way of measuring viscosity. And what you do is you dip this in the liquid and you pull it out. And at the point this breaks the surface and can start running out, you count a second-hand stopwatch how many seconds it takes this liquid to drain out of this cup. Whatever those seconds are, that chart will tell you what needle to use, which one of these you should use. Or you can experiment and play. This is a pretty good guideline. Do I measure these? No. But I've been spraying forever too. So, you can get, a lot of the turbine companies and whatever, there's two types send these with their guns. This one, there's two companies that make them. One is called Zahn. This is a number 2 Zahn. Z-A-H-N. The other one is made by a company called Ford. It's like the car. You can get one and give it a shot if you want. But the object of the game is and we'll show you that when we get into looking at spray patterns and what you're looking for. But what I want you to understand is keeping your guns clean, how they function, how they work. One last tip. Remember me showing you these little teeny itty bitty little holes in here? In these air caps? Something as simple as keeping yourself a pack of really small sewing needles can help you to get in there and clean them. Don't ever force it, because these are very, very precision and you don't want to damage them. Here's the last tip. If water base, if it's not wanting to come clean, soak it in some acetone. The last final tip on this is don't use, like in this little teeny small gun, they make nozzles that go down below a 1. Water base is just too thick to use in there. Sometimes it'll just clog it up. That's a look at spray guns. Stir sticks, not what we're going to talk about. All right, turbines. If you live in the South, they're turbines. So we're going to talk about turbines. What are turbines? You want to know the truth? It's a vacuum cleaner in reverse. Pretty simple. The turbines are pretty cool in the fact that you don't have to have air compressors and everything like that. It's pretty much a self-contained unit. Now, the other thing I like about turbines is that they're very portable. But again, they come in every shape, size you can think of. Here's an Airless, there's a Turbinair, you've got Fuji out there, you've got AccuSpray. It's a whole lot of them. And they're good units, okay? Now, again, which one should you buy? The best one you can afford, simply put. But just like the spray guns, and we've showed you, you've got the interchangeable needles and nozzles. That's extremely important, particularly with water bases. Now, and see this, like on this one, here's a chart with Turbinair, and they also send you the little viscosity cup as well as Airless, and they'll have a chart that will tell you that they will give you recommended fluids, whatever you're spraying, and they give you chart size, your needle recommendations. And again, that's predominantly depending upon what you're spraying. They're nice. This is a 2-stage. That's a 4-stage GT. Behind me is a 3-stage. Which one do you need? Depends upon what you're going to do. Will this 2-stage spray water base? Yes, it will. There's been a lot of controversy about that. but we're going to look at that. Will this 4-stage? Yeah. Will the 3? Yeah, it will. Water base is the barometer because it's the tough one to break up and to atomize, and we talked about that. Now, this little gun right here, it's a 2-stage. It has, I think it's a 13-foot hose on it. This 4-stage GT deal, I've got 2 extensions. This is a flex extension, that's an accessory. Down here, I have a real heavy-duty hose that's also an accessory. This one, you got 1 speed. This one, sort of like a compressor, you've got adjustable speed. The biggest difference is that if you put 30 foot of hose on this, it's not going to do what you need to do. With the 13 foot that's on, it's going to do just fine. You know, it's like anything else. You know, when you're pushing air, the further, you know, it's like taking your shop vac, you know, and putting a great big long hose on it, or your dust collection system. The further you are from that dust collector, less suction you get. Simple as that. So, but then there's the other side to it, and that's the duty cycles. What am I talking about? Home environment, spraying here and there and doing this, whatever, this little guy does well. This guy is an industrial, so is this. If you're going to be doing a lot of spraying and a lot of hard spraying and running it a lot, you know, you want to look at something bigger and heavier. If you're out in your garage or you want to spray a room or whatever, will this little guy do it? You better believe it. You sure will. So, again, you have to look at what you're going to be doing. All right? Why do we have both? Well, we teach some and we teach the turbines. But I want to talk about one last thing on them. In the spray guns, we talked a little earlier about where this one doesn't have the fan adjustment. Is that a big deal? Not really. Is it nice? Yes. This bigger, higher end unit, you've got all kind of little accessories. You can actually do what's called like a pressure pot, where you have the big pot, carries a lot of material that you can pressurize, and then you have the gun, kind of like that air-assisted Airless cart you can carry it on. This one back here comes with a cart for wrapping up and carrying the hose, all kind of things. This has a touch-up kit goes with it, you can get with it. Again, it's whatever your need is. But one of the things I want to show you, because you're going to see this and you're going to wonder what the difference is. Now, to my knowledge, in every single air-operated spray gun, meaning compressed air, all of those are what's called a non-bleeder. What does that mean? Well, I'm going to show you. If I plug this in and turn it on, I have air coming out of here continuous. I have one set on the trigger, and that is when I pull the trigger, I release fluid. All right, then we have the 4-stage. Now again, understand, 2-stage, there's a 3, here's a 4. You know, it's kind of like a 4-cylinder, a 6-cylinder, and a turbocharged 8. Simple as that. On this one, this is called a non-bleeder. Now what's the difference? When I turn this on, I have no air coming out. And the air-operated spray guns work the same. I have actually a 2 set on the trigger. One set, I get air. Second pull, I get fluid and air. So it's air, fluid. air fluid. Okay? Nothing. And then when we get to spraying, you'll see these things work quite well. Somebody's going to want to know which is my favorite. Spray guns. Simple as that. Why? I'm used to them. I've been using them before these showed up. These have been around a good while. Like my friend Bob Close and a lot of my friends in this business, they love the turbines. They're used to them, okay? When I first got my first gravity fed with the cup on top, it was the hardest thing in the world for me to get used to because I was used to having the weight of the fluid in the bottom of my hand. Now I've got it on the top of my hand. Now that I've gotten used to that, the turbines, they spray just as well. There's no ifs and ands and buts. But just for me, it's a simple matter of having the cup on the bottom versus the cup on the top. It's a simple matter of getting used to it. All right, but in as much as my ability to finish with them, there's no difference. So, am I telling you to go buy a spray gun with an air compressor and all that? No. These work great. In reality, probably if I was going out and I'm looking to learn how to start spraying and or upgrade my spraying a little bit, I'd probably go with the turbines, unless I could justify the air compressor. Now I'm just going to address that very quickly. It doesn't take a huge air compressor to drive one of these HVLPs. It really does. Now you don't want that little teeny job, but something with a 2-3 horsepower, with a 20-gallon tank will drive one of them. It will. If you're going to use that same air compressor though, and you're going to use it for air sanders and whatever, they're not going to do it. We've talked about this in sanding. You need a big air compressor. You need a minimum of a 5 horse, with an 80-gallon tank. That simple. Okay? But again, the choice is yours. Now, the last thing I want to mention is that with the compressed air, it's not a simple matter of buy an air compressor, get a hose and plug it in. Because air compressors create moisture. When the air goes in a tank, it goes in at about 240 degrees. And as it snakes through that hose and whatever, it cools down, and when it does, it creates moisture. And it can get moisture in your finish. Or your tools. So one of the things with an air compressor is you definitely want to look at having some type of a filter or water traps, what they're called, on it. Something to filter and clean your air. Here's another tip. Don't put it directly on the air compressor. The air's too hot. If there's any way possible, try to put it as close to the tool as you can get. Now, in our shop where we have a large air compressor and it's piped through the shop, here's another tip. Don't use PVC pipe to pipe air. There's 2 reasons. One, normally it doesn't hold up, even the heavy Schedule 40 stuff. The glue joints just are not made to take that kind of pressure. The second thing is that it insulates and doesn't allow the air to cool. A quick trick to that is use copper. Okay, I realize it's a little bit more expensive, and you got to solder it. Don't use steel or galvanized pipe. Never. The moisture in the air will cause it to rust inside, and you get all these little rust particles in there, and they can be a nightmare. Believe me. We tore down a spray booth. We spent 6 months we were having issues getting dirt in our finishes. We just had nightmares. Come to find out, there was a little galvanized piece of pipe that was in our system, right where it came out into our finish spray system, and the ends of that had rusted, and inside it was just little teeny flakes of rust. And every time we sprayed, it would get a little moisture, and those little flakes would come out, contaminated our finish. All right, so that's a lesson that, believe me, we paid dear to learn. And there's a lot of nice little, they're not super expensive. But the reason for having a copper run, even if it's just a piece of coiled up copper, is that the copper diffuses heat very, very well, and it'll allow the heat to escape, cool the air down before it goes through your filter. All right, that's turbines and a nickel tour of air compressors. I'm going to talk about a couple things. First, we're going to talk about safety. Now, don't take lightly what I'm going to tell you. If you do, you wish you hadn't. The first thing I'm going to tell you is there's absolutely no such thing as a safe finish, whether it be water-based or solvent. Water-based contains solvents and they contain chemicals. Now, solvents, water bases are not flammable. Solvents are. And particularly with the solvents, they do a thing called gassing off. I could expand on that, but I'm not. I'll be nice. Anyway, when they're drying, the fumes or the solvents are evaporating and they're going into the air. Not only that, but when you're spraying it, you're going to have these fumes going into the air. So you need a good exhaust system. You need something that's going to be pulling the air out. Now, if you're in a basement environment, you got to think about something. If you're sucking air out, air's got to come in from somewhere. If it's in the winter and you've got your furnace or whatever's down there, you can mess with that because you're pulling more air out than is coming in. Same thing happens if you make yourself a spray booth. You've got to take air out, you've got to bring air in. So you need a filtered wall or something to allow that air to come in. There's a lot of books and there's a lot of stuff out here on making a spray booth. And I'm not going to get into that because there's too many codes and whatever out there. You need to check and see what you can do. I will tell you up front, spraying solvents in a basement or in a garage that has living space above it is not a good idea. Because those fumes can get up into your house. And not only do they stink, but they're not good for you at all. Now, depending upon what you're spraying, and particularly, again, solvents, you want a really good respirator. That's one of the most important things. And when you look for one, you want to find something that is OSHA and NIOSHA approved. You want something that says it protects you from chemicals, pesticides, asbestos. You want to make sure you're covered. Now, very quickly on that, you want a respirator that fits your face very well. These little guys are not respirators. They're minor dust masks. These do not do it. You want a good respirator, you want it to fit your face well. A nice small compact one works good. The other thing you want to do is keep your respirator in a plastic bag. A lot of them use a charcoal as part of the filtration, and by keeping it in a plastic bag, not only does it keep it clean, but it keeps your charcoal from deactivating. Very, very important. All right, if you're spraying anything and you wear glasses, you want a good pair of goggles and you want or you can buy the over-the-glasses safety glasses. There's a reason. Especially solvent, again. But even the water-based, the overspray, the dust, the mist that's in the air is very, very sticky, and it'll stick to your glasses. And in a lot of cases where you have plastic lenses, it'll actually eat into your lenses, and you can't get it off. And you'll ruin your glasses. If you are spraying post-catalyzed conversion varnishes, anything that's using a catalyst, here's a really good recommendation. You can buy a full face mask. Most of the catalyst that is used in solvents contains an acid. It's an acid that reacts with the urformaldehyde and blah, blah, blah. But it's an acid in it, and it will burn your eyes to no end. It will burn your nose, it will burn your lungs. It will give you some of the best sinus and respiratory infections you've ever seen. That's the least of it. The other thing with a lot of different products is that a lot of the stuff in it can be absorbed by your skin, and your body doesn't throw it off, and your body will build it up without you knowing it, right to the point that you get a lethal dose. You know, cover your arms. You know, or something as simple as a shower cap helps protect. The other thing it does with a shower cap is that it keeps a loose hair or something from falling into your finish. Simple thing to do is to wear a long sleeve, put a piece of tape around it. Wear gloves. Extremely important. Stick a little piece of cotton in your ears. Don't let this stuff into your body. It's not a good thing. All right, now we're going to talk about some aids to help us spray. Here's one. Being able to get your piece up that you're spraying to where you're very comfortable is a really good thing. And if you look at this, we've got this elevated. Now what we have here, these are called nail boards. Actually, these are just a screwed up into a piece of MDF, and they work okay. They work well. And it's what we've used forever. And even up until a couple months ago, this would have been what I would have been showing you. Now again, I don't advertise products, but I'm just showing you. And these work well. Now what you do is typically you would have a couple sticks here, and you lay your piece down and you spray it. You spray the back side first, and you do not spray the edges. Then, because these little nail points can make a little teeny spot, that's why you spray the back first. Then you pick it up, turn it over, spray your front, and spray your edges. Okay, you're able to spray both sides and able to dry at the same time. Now, here's a little gadget that has now showed up. Simple as it can be, one of them things, why didn't I think of that? It's simply a little nylon pyramid. They call them painter's pyramids. I think I got these at Woodcraft. They're showing up all over. It's exactly what it implies. Now, it doesn't have a sharpened end on it, so it really doesn't penetrate. It leaves a very, very minor thing. But again, do your back surface first, then flip it and do it. Here's another cool thing to be able to get around. It's a Lazy Susan. A little bit of MDF, works great. Just a Lazy Susan bearing. I'll show it to you very quickly. The reason I'm going to show it to you, it's just a Lazy Susan bearing, is because I can do a smaller base on the bottom, and depending upon the size of what I'm spraying, I can turn it over. Simple as that. These holes are where I have to screw my Lazy Susan down. Another neat idea on bigger pieces is a larger Lazy Susan. This one's made a little different. All we've got under here is some relatively inexpensive casters and a dowel in the center to keep it so it'll roll. This product, this paper, is called masking paper. We buy it at the auto body store. Now this paper that right here, this is craft paper. This is a little more expensive than this, but this is fuzzy. This has, it's like a paper bag. And you know, this actually has a coating on it to resist solvents and finishes. And so it helps dramatically to keep your spraying surfaces clean, because over time, believe me, they will build up. And when you're spraying, the little bit of dust and overspray that'll fall down, it kind of collects. You can see it on top of these little nail boards. And it can create dust when you're spraying. The other neat thing about the Lazy Susans is that it helps keep your finishes cleaner, because you're not trying to drag hoses and move around. You're able to stand pretty much in one place and do your work. Might sound like a dumb thing. Bedpost. Bedposts are tough to spray. You've got a, you know, especially if you've got a 7-foot post. There's no way to really rotate it well and get all your surfaces. Here in our spray booth, we have a chain. And we can screw a little eye hook into the bottom of it and hang it. Sometimes we do the same thing with bed rails. So what am I telling you? Is that to set up and prepare for your spraying. Make sure you can access well. Don't be fumbling and have a bunch of junk, trash around and everything. It's just going to create dust. It's going to give you issues. Think about what you're going to do. Make sure it's safe and make sure you're set up to do it.